Yeah, I'll react to that, sure.
Hey guys, hero or terrorist? John Brown, number one, extra history. I am aware of who John Brown was. Apparently, he was a lunatic, but who did good things in an era where people were trying to decide whether we should keep slaves or not. And apparently, he did some crazy stuff, but in a good cause. So I guess that's the hero or terrorist thing. But I definitely don't know a lot about him other than he was an avid abolitionist who gave no. Let's go. All right. My name's Connor. I like to learn things and watch stuff. Extra history, great channel. Original link to the video, top of the description, Discord below that. Just makes it easier for me to interact with you if you join, and, see your recommendations, but not for everyone. Let's go.
County, Kansas Territory, Franklin County, Kansas Territory, May 24th, 1856. In the dead of night, the militiamen enter the house with guns and order three men, James Doyle and his adult sons William and Drury, to come with them. They reluctantly comply, while Doyle's wife and the boy's mother watches sobbing. The armed men lead the Doyles into the dark and begin to question them. Had they participated in the sacking of the abolitionist town of Lawrence? You see, 3 days ago, an armed paramilitary force had descended on Lawrence, flying banners reading Southern Rights and varying racist phrases. They had smashed the presses of its two abolitionist newspapers and burned down the Free State Hotel. As they were being questioned, the Doyles noticed something. These interrogators were not from the law. Rather, they are the radical abolitionist John Brown and two of his sons, and this is not an arrest. Of course, we don't know exactly how they responded, but at a signal from Brown, broadswords flash in the moonlight. And when the screaming dies down, Brown finishes James Doyle with a pistol shot, and he and his boys depart. They have a busy night ahead of them. There are 3 more slavers on his list tonight.
What a start.
Thanks so much to Trade Coffee for keeping us.
Guys, if any of the not just extra history TV, if any of, I say this all the time, if any of the things that are advertised in the videos I watch interest you, please make sure you give the creator credit, okay, and use their promo codes, their links.
History-loving beans well caffeinated.
Sorry,
John Brown is one of the
nasally.
most controversial figures in American history. A radical abolitionist, he preached that a nonviolent solution to slavery was not possible, that all races were equal under God and the law, and that the only form of emancipation was immediate and total. If that required a violent uprising, then so be it. Now, while we as modern people admire his goals of racial equality and an immediate end to slavery, in the 1850s, these were extreme views, even amongst abolitionists. And Brown's use of violence horrified the largely pacifist anti-slavery movement at the time, at first. He was referred to as insane, as a zealot, and debates continue to this day over whether he was a hero or what we would today call a terrorist. His willingness to act on his principles, to spill white blood to liberate black people, would make him simultaneously one of the most admired and hated men in America, especially after he seized a federal arsenal in an attempt to kickstart and arm a massive slave rebellion. In fact, he's often listed, personally, as lighting the fuse of the Civil War. And if that's true, we know when the match was struck. Ohio, 1812. John Brown has just met a slave owner for the first time, and he likes him. It's a marshal who runs the town where John has just delivered his father's cattle. And at a dinner party, the marshal cannot stop talking about how great
Sorry, I
he
got
thinks
distracted just by Ohio. What is it, the thing with the internet of like Ohio? Just, it was weird. It just, okay, sorry. Like Ohio. All right.
1812. John Brown has just met a slave owner for the first time, and he likes him. It's a marshal who runs the town where John has just delivered his father's cattle. And at a dinner party, the marshal cannot stop talking about how great he thinks John is. He's amazed that John, only 12, drove his father's cattle here alone. He recounts John's adventures and life of hardship, moving from Connecticut to Frontier, Ohio, and losing his mother at age 8. And as the party talks, they're served by the marshal's slave, a boy about John's age. Earlier that evening, the two had played as friends. Now, John is a strict Calvinist, raised in the abolitionist hotbed.
Leaving Connecticut. I don't blame you.
of Hudson, Ohio. He'd been taught slavery
Sorry,
is a strict Calvinist, raised in the abolitionist hotbed of Hudson, Ohio. He'd been taught slavery is evil, and he'd seen the escaped slaves his father, a conductor on the Underground Railroad, hid on their farm. But this Marshall, he doesn't seem evil. He's so nice. But as the guests leave, the same man who'd treated John so kindly walks to the fireplace, picks up an iron shovel, and begins beating his friend over the head with it for not serving the food fast enough. That was John Brown's first brush with slavery. Not the kind portrayed in abolitionist pamphlets and speeches, mind you, but real slavery, where you could see the bruises and smell the blood. It horrified him. Truly, he thought, this was a sin against God. And Brown thought about God a lot. He did so while wandering the woods during his off hours after working in his father's tannery. He memorized the Bible cover to cover and could recite any verse perfectly on command. However, his dreams of becoming a minister were dashed at the age of 16, when he went east to do preparatory theological studies, but found himself unequal to it. His schooling was poor, and an eye condition made him unable to keep up with the reading. He instead returned to Hudson to start a new tannery, complete with a room for hiding escaped slaves. It was a success, though Brown gained a reputation as a bit of an eccentric who would not weigh and sell hides unless they were fully dried, even if the customer wanted them. No customer of mine is paying for water. They brought in a woman to bake bread, and John, though shy, would go on to marry her daughter, Dianthe. They would have 7 children together. Now, we have to take a moment to talk about what Brown was like as a father, because for him, battling slavery would become a family affair. Brown ruled over his family like an Old Testament patriarch. He could be gentle and affectionate, singing his children to sleep and nursing them when they were ill. But even minor infractions in the Brown household were corrected with a switch, despite Brown clearly not enjoying it. In fact, once, when his eldest son, John Jr., had accumulated 25 lashes, Brown saw an opportunity for religious education. After giving the teenaged boy 8, he handed Jr. the switch and told him that he would take the other 17. A lesson he hoped in both Jesus
Interesting.
taking on the sins of the world, and that Junior hurt his father when he disobeyed. When he was 25, Brown sold his tannery and relocated the family to Pennsylvania. This was partially because Brown never felt content unless he was building something, but also because the escaped slaves he hid at his farm would be safer. Despite his youth, Brown became a major figure in the community there, founding another tannery, surveying, becoming a postmaster, and helping 2,500 people escape to Canada over the next decade. Until misfortune struck. First, his 4-year-old son died, followed by Dianthe dying in childbirth, delivering a stillborn daughter.
And a dog?
Brown, himself ill and in deep grief, sent his 5 children to a neighbor as he spent hours each day lying face down on their graves and weeping. He remarried the next year to the
Is stillborn mean it was a baby was born but it was dead? What is stillborn?
day lying face down on their graves and weeping. He remarried the next year to the 17-year-old Marianne, daughter of his housekeeper, with whom he'd have 13 more children.
Jesus!
Yet Brown's businesses never recovered from his lost year. He moved his family back to Ohio and bought land near a developing canal. Sure, he'd be able to sell it for an enormous profit. However, the Panic of 1837 wiped him out, and his large number of children ensured he'd never be financially sound again. This was yet another confusing period for Brown. He knocked around, working where he could find it, and he fretted that, despite his work on the Underground Railroad, he simply wasn't doing enough to battle slavery. He was ejected from his church for inviting a black family to sit in his pew, and mused over starting a school for African American youth. And Brown's dark decade was mirrored nationally in the wider abolitionist movement. During the time of Brown's father, it had been assumed that with the importation of slaves banned in 1807, the institution would die out. Instead, it was growing more powerful politically and economically. Slave owners had responded to the tightened supply with livestock-like breeding programs, doubling the enslaved population from 2 million to 4 million. Efforts to stop slavery's expansion failed as well. Pro-slavery legislators negotiated the Missouri Compromise of 1820, creating a situation where for every northern free state added to the Union, a southern slave state would be added as well. Slavery advocates also increasingly relied upon violence. In 1835, a pro-slavery mob in Boston crashed a lecture by William Lloyd Garrison, founder of the American Anti-Slavery Society. The 1,500 rioters pulled Garrison through the street by a rope, and only the mayor's intervention prevented his lynching. Another blow came in 1837, when an armed mob besieged minister and abolitionist newspaper editor Elijah P. Lovejoy in the warehouse that he'd used to hide his printing press. Lovejoy was shot 5 times and had to be buried in an unmarked grave to prevent desecration. Memorial services were held across the nation, and in Springfield, Massachusetts, a strange thing happened. At the end of the service, as the last hymn reverberated, a man stepped from the back of the church and raised his right hand.
John?
He was new in town, a wool specialist, I think, but he'd already made an impression. "Here by God," the man said, "in the presence of these witnesses, from this time, I consecrate my life to the destruction of slavery." It was John Brown, and he had found his mission. A mission.
That was so quick.
He was in exactly the right place to pursue, since he had moved to Springfield in order to make the connections that would help him strike a death blow to slavery. Connections that would put him in contact with Frederick Douglass, Harriet Tubman, and the Secret Six, the abolitionist financiers who discreetly funded his guerrilla war. The path to bloody Kansas was laid, and John Brown would follow it. Seriously, there's so much.
I really know so little about Frederick Douglass. I know the gist, I think. I mean, there are people who you learn about in elementary, middle school, high school. But, Harriet Tubman, obviously, big. I don't know if she kind of choreographed the movements of slaves to, like, the least chance of being caught, and I don't really exactly know what what qualified a part to be the Underground Railroad, just like the passage of least chance of getting caught, and then that passage began known as the Underground Railroad. I really need to learn more about Frederick Douglass, both of them, but I just spit, especially Fred.
Financiers who discreetly funded his guerrilla war. The path to bloody Kansas was laid, and John Brown would follow it. Seriously, there's so much more for us to cover, we're gonna need a pick-me-up. Ooh, so you know what that means, Zoe? Heck yeah, coffee o'clock delivered right to my door. Thanks, Trade Coffee. Now, as some of you probably know by now, I've gotten pretty deep into...
Guys, I'm gonna play through the ad, but people might leave since it's at the end of the video. Awesome. Thanks guys for watching. Love to see your comments, and hope you guys are doing well. I will see you next time.
What one could call the infinity gauntlet of convenient commodities. And, okay, actually, hold on a second. I'm gonna stop reading the script real quick. Do you all know how long I have wanted to actually work with Trade Coffee? Because, seriously, myself and, like, most of the EC crew drink a lot of coffee, and we're always looking for new roasts from independent roasters, right? Using ethically and sustainably sourced beans, because that is something that is very important. And then we finally got talking with Trade, and it was a match made in caffeinated heaven. I am so pumped, and now I'm going to tell you all about them. So their whole thing is to enable you to make the best cup of coffee at home, specifically to your taste, every day. Case in point, I am a down and dirty French press boy for life. So
I love those too. I mean, I don't really mind where I get my coffee from. I mean, I don't see how drip coffee is a bad thing, but I like pressed coffee too.
Not only did Trade help me select a great blend from a local New York roaster, mind you, but they also ground it to my preferred brewing method and then delivered it fresh to my door, so it was ready to make like the moment it arrived. And it was so good. Whereas Jeff is more of an espresso guy with his fancy schmancy latte machine, so he opted for dark roast whole beans from an indie roaster to grind himself. And then actually when we got together to talk about which brewing method was better, it's the French press, by the way, we actually just ended up talking about how well Trade really did match our flavor palettes to the coffees that they sent us. We were actually pretty impressed. So look, if you would like to join us in upgrading your morning routine with just a way better coffee, right now Trade is offering all y'all one free bag of coffee with any subscription if you use our link, drinktrade.com/extra credits. And then once you sign up, not only will you of course be getting the best beans in the business, but seriously, you will be making us look really good to a sponsor we've been wanting to work with for a while, and that will super help out the channel. So thank you very much for that. Once again, that's drinktrade.com/extra credits. The link, of course, is in the description, or you can click right up there if that is easier for you. And yeah, thanks so much. And seriously, happy brewing. If you are a coffee lover, I think you're going to really dig this.
When it comes to coffee, look, I'm like a drug addict approach to coffee. Coffee is an inconvenience to me. I like it because it has caffeine in it. It makes me more awake, okay? And so I will drink if I have a cup of coffee that's black, that is really from yesterday, that's on my desk, I just drink that. Like and so like when it comes to coffee, it's like it's I don't need like that perfect because with coffee I'm just look, you know. All right, see you guys next time. Bye.